Okay, we're back to talk about The Dive, which is Silo Season 2, Episode 7. This episode, written by Catherine DiSavino, directed by Michael Denner, Silo taken from a series of short stories by Hugh Howey. In Episode 7, Bernard takes Lucas to the vault in Silo 18, and we finally see what is inside. The vault contains countless books and artifacts from human history, as well as a very smart computer algorithm that contains information about human history. It includes the fact that the silo was built 352 years ago, but no information remains about why or how it was made. Mechanical, led by Shirley Knox, fire a device into the upper levels containing messages that the people of the silo should not trust IT. They shut down the power to the silo, which reveals that IT still has their own power for some reason. Bernard confronts Sims, tells him about his wife playing both sides. Sims then confronts his wife. They start to talk about what their intentions are, but they do promise to keep each other in the loop, tell each other everything going forward. Meanwhile, in the down deep, Walker is distraught over Carla still being in prison. So she decides to turn on her camera to try to get a message to her, but that message is intercepted by Bernard. Meanwhile, in Silo 17, Juliet dives down a number of levels to fix the water pump after she and Solo figure out a way for her to breathe and to see underwater. While she's down there, her air is cut off. When she resurfaces, she finds Solo missing and evidence that someone might have been harmed to him and might be in the silo with them. I have a confession to make for you. You can't see this on the audio version. However, this was one of my Christmas presents.
Uh-oh.
So I have received the books for this for the Wool series from Hugh Howey. I'm not reading them until after this season is over. Um,
Are you going
I
to mess it up for further seasons?
Yeah, exactly. But for 3 and 4 are going to be, yeah, going to be all screwed up. So I happened at a good time though. I got these on Wednesday, watched this the next day. I quite enjoyed this episode, and so I'm really sort of very interested to dive deeper into not only this show but the books, sort of the lore behind this. So, like I said, enjoyed this episode. Found both things in 17 and 18 compelling. You have a place you want to start? Which title you want to start with?
Yeah, well, let me just say, first of all, I was half joking when I said you're going to mess it up for future seasons, right? Like, potentially we could still talk about Silo on the podcast when you know things I don't know. It's just a complication. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? You can still write on it, but then because I have engaged with some stuff where it's clear that the person is doing this, right? They're covering the TV show, they have read the books, but they're withholding and trying to just be very
Yeah.
careful. Um,
I think I'm most interested in there seem to be, from what little things I've caught online, some nuances, some slight things that they've done differently. And I'm just sort of curious what those are. I really haven't decided yet if I'll read ahead past, I think it's the first, I think the first book covers the first 2 seasons. We'll see sort of how things progress. But it's sort of interesting to see what they've done, what licenses they've taken with this.
yeah, up to you. I'm just to be clear, I'm not telling you not to read the books. Reading's good. You read the books. We'll finish season two first. Where to start here? I mean, in Silo 18, I guess, is where I want to start. Um, I have a couple of questions that I don't know if they're good questions or not. Um, so you mentioned that the rebels, as it were, mechanical, they shoot this thing up and it's got little pieces of paper.
Yeah.
And we are shown a little piece of paper that says, something, something, yada, yada, don't trust IT. And it says, look and see, right?
Mm. Yep.
Then they turn off the generator and all the lights go out except on the IT level. It read to me very much like the people in mechanical knew that that was going to happen, but then I
Yeah.
realized we've got no indication of any way that they would know that that was going to happen. What do you think?
Yeah, so I was very, I won't say confused, but intrigued by this exact scene because we learn in Silo 17 that there is a power source dedicated to IT. We've seen that with Juliet and Solo. Then we see Mechanical turn off the power to the entire silo, except that the IT level still has its own, as you mentioned. So is this a scenario where Mechanical knows that that's the case, or is this a scenario where they have the ability to control power to anywhere and everywhere, and they can sort of select which areas they're turning off and on. So did they leave IT on purpose to sort of sow some
Well,
discontent, or is that a surprise to mechanical as well? I frankly don't know, but I'm very interested to see what the reaction is to that.
I'm finding it kind of funny that I just realized you said, well, one possibility is that Bernard's telling the truth.
Yeah, right.
That's what I didn't even consider that. Um, I think I'm landing on coincidence. Although it's interesting to think about, is there any way in which anyone down there would know or suspect that I'm sorry, that IT has its own power source?
Yeah,
I didn't even really think about it at first because as viewers, we already knew that.
right.
So you have to kind of take a step back and realize that from what we've seen in the show, there's really no indication that the people in mechanical whom we know that.
Yeah, the only bridge between, and I use the term bridge loosely because it's not really that at all, between mechanical and the authority is Sheriff Billings, but he's sort of stayed neutral in this whole thing. It's not like I don't think he knows that information and has shared that with mechanical. He doesn't seem like something he would do at this point in time.
No, the only thing that seems at all plausible to me, do you remember in season one how they haven't really revisited this, but there were like remnants of a group who were trying to like keep the memories alive and this sort of thing. There is in this episode where Walker says something like, she didn't do enough 25 years ago. What
Yeah.
exactly happened 25 years ago? Because it wasn't just, I mean, that was when she split up with her wife, Carla, but why and what was going
Yeah,
on in the
but
silo at the time?
yeah.
That becomes a question. So, like, if you think about those pieces of paper, it seems like they have a whole bunch of different messages on them.
Hmm.
Um, and we kind of see them gathering paper down there. And so then maybe different people were writing on different ones. So I don't know, like maybe there is someone down there who knows or suspects that IT has its own power source. That's the best I can do. Otherwise, I'm tempted to say maybe it's just a coincidence.
Coincidence. And I know at one point in this episode, I think it's Hank, Deputy Hank is interrogating folks, and he says, "Someone, we've got a rat problem, right? We're trying to weed out this person who is communicating information back up to IT and to judicial. Is it possible that there's a rat problem the other way, that someone from their side is feeding information to mechanical? Very well could be. We just don't know who that is yet or how that's happening. But yeah, and so it'll be a very odd coincidence to write on these pieces of paper, look and see what's about to happen, turn off the power, and then, oh, happy surprise for us, IT has power.
Now, here's another possibility. This actually just occurred to me right now. What if it was Camille?
That makes sense.
She talks to Sims in this episode about kind of working both sides and all of that
Hmm.
sort of thing. Um, I don't know. Is she in touch with Knox and Shirley at this point? I mean, maybe there are ways perhaps to get some kind of
Yeah.
message. If she did that, then she's definitely gone further than I even thought, though, in
Yeah. And
terms
it
of
certainly is
helping.
possible that there's been some, pillow talk between her and her husband about, things that IT has or can do or certain advantages they have that may have been able to slip a message to mechanical at some point through Camille. Yeah, I think that's certainly a possibility.
That would be interesting. I don't know if we'll get confirmation in one way or the other. Really, it was this was something I didn't think about until after I kind of sat with the episode a bit because it flows in a pretty direct way, and we as viewers knew that this was the case. But yeah, if you start thinking about it, how would they know? And
Mhm.
you know, yeah, now I'm finding that to be an interesting possibility that Camille, who we know has worked in judicial and works in IT, I don't know, maybe she slipped that information out there. Further thoughts about what's going on with her and Sim, since we've already hit on that
Yeah,
topic.
and this is now I'm sort of thinking, okay, she was before this conversation between Bernard and Sims and Camille. She was playing both sides. Is she still sort of doing that, but telling her husband, oh yeah, I'm on your side. Whatever you want, I'm going to get behind. We're always going to tell each other everything. Has she sort of seen enough in her experience as a raider and in Sim's time as the shadow of IT where she says, I'm just sort of done with this. I would rather be on the side of the people who are, whatever, they're oppressed or they're just, I'd rather be on the side of those in mechanical. They're making this, as we've said, perhaps mistaken assumption about what's going on. So she could still be playing both sides, I think. It's possible.
Yeah, I mean, my speculation would be if she is, or to the extent that she is, because we know she is to some extent, I guess, from
Hmm.
what she says to Sims and what we've already seen her do. I still think her goal would not be um, a successful rebellion by Mechanical per se, but to play Mechanical and Bernard off of one another so
Yeah.
that ultimately they both lose and
Yes.
Camille and Robert can take control of the silo or something like
Yeah.
that. Um, so it's interesting how they've they kind of slowly seeded this plot line, and I'm really curious to see where that wraps up. Because look, when you have that conversation between Sims and Bernard, I think I'm getting this right.
Yeah.
Like, Sims is sort of right that Bernard is running out of allies here.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
He's lost the sheriff. He tells all the rest of the cops. I turned off the radios because Billings is being coerced into lying over the radios, and who's going to buy that? And turned off the communication through the computers and all of that. So meaningfully, it kind of feels like he's lost the cops, or at least all of them are on the edge a little bit.
Yes.
Um, he's got Lucas, and Lucas is a criminal,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I think everyone knows that.
I don't think for one second Lucas is now a disciple or devoted to Bernard, in some sense. He's just been given a role.
Do you think I've seen a number of people suggest that Bernard's just using Lucas for the purpose of cracking this code?
Hmm.
And once they crack the code, Bernard will just summarily kill Lucas. Do you think that, or because it's weird because I kind of don't. I kind of think Bernard is seriously actually making Lucas's shadow. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I think he respects his intelligence and it respects the way that he approaches problem solving. But then, yeah, he didn't hesitate too much in killing someone that he clearly used to love and knew for 25 years or more. So, I mean, I certainly wouldn't put it past Bernard, but I do think there's some sincere motivations behind making Lucas a shadow as opposed to just because why would you, for someone that smart, why would you take that risk of exposing everything to them in case something goes wrong and he flips or so so whatever the case may be. I think that's a big risk to take if you're just going to say, well, once I'm done with you, I'll get rid of you.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll find out what
Yeah,
Bernard has in mind exactly because of what's going to happen. Like, because Bernard doesn't know what's about to happen. Bernard
right.
doesn't know what's in Quinn's letter, which they're about to decode, I think,
Yeah,
right? And that's going to be its own kind of wrench in the plot here. But just for whatever it's worth, the way I'm reading things, I think that Bernard intends to actually make Lucas his shadow. But of course, there would be some level of loyalty testing along the way before
yeah,
Lucas actually really took any real power. Like
yes,
Bernard probably has no intention of letting him out of the vault until he is confident
yeah,
that he understands why the order says what it says and is on board with following it. But again, I don't think that's how it's going to play out
no,
because the by the end of this episode, they seem really really close to cracking the code,
yeah,
and then we're going to learn whatever this terrible truth is that we know caused Meadows
yeah.
to quit her role as Shadow. So, how will Lucas take that? How will Bernard take that? And what is it?
Yeah, and I think it's you raised some interesting questions. Maybe we can get into now the idea of how Lucas comes to know what will crack this code, what the book is that's going to do it. how did he come across that information? Why does the AI server in the vault not have access to this book? Just like thinking about reading a book digitally these days. It's like, yeah, they still have page numbers. You can still match up the cipher with the letter, on the page, but Bernard seems to think it's a one specific particular copy of the Wizard of Oz that's going to let them use that as the code breaker.
Well, whether it's a specific copy, let's wait, let's slow down, let's take a step back. All right, so first of all, what's going on with the code? I don't know if they laid this all out as well as some might want. I imagine it's probably clearer in the books, but I do think it's there. We had the mention last week of a Caesar shift, not a
Mm.
Caesar shift. Caesar shift is when you like shift every letter 11 places in the alphabet or something.
Right.
It's a pretty simple way of doing a code. Um, it's also apparently not. Oh, I didn't even write the name in my notes. It's like a Vignere or something like this. Is another kind of shift where you got like a code word and then you shift things based on each letter of that code word.
I see.
Apparently
Okay.
it's not that either. This is a book cipher. I don't really know what I'm talking about. But people can go read. I mean, I find cryptography very fascinating personally, particularly because if you read about this stuff, the people who are really experts can mathematically crack these codes without having the cipher,
Yeah, yeah.
which is fascinating. But Lucas can't do that. Lucas just like found out what a Caesar
Yeah.
shift is. Um, but he's apparently figured out that this is a book cipher. It's 77 is apparently coming from the fact that Salvador Quinn uses the number seven twice in the part of his letter that's not encoded.
Yes, yes.
So Lucas has then asked Siri to check page 77 of every book in the database or whatever. And that didn't work, right? So he's figuring it has to be some book that's not in the legacy. That was how I read this. But then I started thinking, well, this is weird, right? Because what Lucas says is, well, Quinn would want people to be able to decode this. So he'd want to use a book that was out in the silo. Fair enough. Why isn't it also in the digital library?
Why does it have to be one or the other? Yeah, is what you're saying, I think.
Yeah. But I
Yeah, no,
but
I don't have an answer to that. You put in our notes, why is Wizard of Oz not in the collection of digital text that their version of Siri has? I hate to think that's just like an oversight, but it doesn't make sense why it's not.
yeah, well, I mean, I have an idea or two. I was thinking about this. I mean, okay, so one possibility is that it's intentionally left out because the Wizard of Oz itself is verboten, like getting
Yeah.
too close to the thought that this is an illusion or whatever.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I don't know that that really tracks because then, the fact that there's a copy of the book out in the world, maybe, but maybe we need to think about, well, what happened 140 years ago? What happened with the rebellion? And this is when Quinn wrote this letter. And we know that part of the aftermath of that was making all the relics forbidden and all of that. So now I'm thinking perhaps before that rebellion, people were allowed to have books and the Wizard of Oz was just widely around everywhere. So, like,
Mm.
maybe the explanation is it's not in the legacy because they didn't think it needed to be. It
Yeah.
wasn't, it wasn't secret. They weren't keeping it from the populace. The populace had it all over the place. And now, because they've destroyed relics and all of this, it's like, well, maybe this is the only copy that's still around.
Yeah.
Um,
And while you're saying this, I'm thinking about Solo asking Juliet, you've read Romeo and Juliet, right? Your name's the same. And almost in like, and I guess it's hard to say definitively one way or the other. He could have, as just as the shadow of IT, read Romeo and Juliet, but the way he made it sound like was, oh, you haven't read this book, or they let you read books in your silo. And so yeah, there's this sense of before these rebellions happen, are books more widely available, and when the rebellion happened in 17, it was successful, so it didn't matter, so they didn't have to put the clamp down on the relics and the books and all that. But in 18 they did have to, because they were able to squash the rebellion, so we don't want those things around anymore. It's hard to sort of balance, because we don't know exactly the balance between them, but it just made me think about the conversation of Solo and Juliet talking about books that they have in common.
Yeah, that's interesting because she says no, they're not allowed to have books, but she is familiar with the story of Romeo and Juliet. However, it also, if you recall that conversation, seems the ending is not the same.
Correct.
So she says something like, "They don't die. What are you talking about?" So I don't know what version of Romeo and Juliet, is out there in Silo 18. Oh, they live happily ever after. They win the lottery and have a kid. Um, Anyhow, they've got the Wizard of Oz. It would appear that it's a book cipher. I think this is probably the book, although I mean it's possible they might be messing around a little bit. If you really, I did want to make this point. If you really wanted anyone out in the silo to be able to crack this code, potentially,
Yeah,
why not use the pact? Everyone has a copy of the pact.
exactly.
And indeed, in the real world, historically, often book ciphers use the Bible, for example.
Yep.
Um, but then I got thinking also about how I think the pact was written after the rebellion 140 years ago.
Oh, is that true?
I don't know. I don't
Well,
think
for
we know.
some reason, I thought the pact was, this is our Magna Carta. This is the thing that's been around since the beginning. But I could be wrong about that.
Well, they might present it as such. I don't think we know the answer to this question. Has the pact been a book that's been there since the beginning, since the creation of the silos?
Yeah,
Or was the pact created after the rebellion 140 years ago?
yeah,
I
yeah.
think the latter is a possibility. I got thinking about that thought. Like, well, he couldn't have used the pact because, or something, right? Like they were
Yeah.
writing it at the time. Speaking of which, I noticed in something, I was watching one of these recap videos or whatever. Are you aware we saw Salvador Quinn's copy of the pact in season one? They show the
Yeah,
pact and it
so
says Salvador Quinn on it. Like he's
So
wrote
I've,
his
I've
name on this
since, yeah,
copy.
since learned that I think this is the video that I linked to in my piece this week,
Oh,
that I did
maybe.
not make the connection at the time, but in a Apple TV released video about theories leading into season two, there are very clear shots of this as Rebecca Ferguson is talking about fan theories about the show, where we see the pact with his name on it. Then we see a page of the pact with certain specific letters underlined, that leads me to believe that, oh, is that also something that we need to be paying attention to, in terms of there's some sort of cipher that relates to the letters in that book. So yeah, so apparently we did see that, and I just did not realize that, or make that connection until this.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe the Wizard of Oz is a misdirect and the book cipher is actually the pact. Or maybe the code is going to tell us that the pact is in the code,
Hmm.
that when you decode the pact tells you the terrible truth. I don't know.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know. Anyway, I wanted to throw in here, just out of curiosity, I looked up The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. There's a digital copy here from the Gutenberg Project. So I'm just presuming the page numbers are the same, right?
Yeah.
It's always possible that a different edition has different page numbers. Usually they keep this consistent in my experience with books, but not always. Anyhow, I don't know if you looked at this, but I'm going to read this page. It's short. It's short.
I did.
But
I did.
I thought it was interesting that this is what's on page 77 of The Wizard of Oz. This was to be an eventful day for the travelers. They had hardly been walking an hour when they saw before them a great ditch that crossed the road and divided the forest as far as they could see on either side. It was a very wide ditch, And when they crept up to the edge and looked into it, they could see it was also very deep, and there were many big jagged rocks at the bottom. The sides were so steep that none of them could climb down, and for a moment it seemed that their journey must end. What shall we do? Asked Dorothy despairingly. I haven't the faintest idea, said the Tin Woodman, and the lion shook his shaggy mane and looked thoughtful. But the Scarecrow said, We cannot fly, that is certain. Neither can we climb down into this great ditch. Therefore, if we cannot jump over it, we must stop where we are. I think I can jump over it, said the Cowardly Lion, after measuring the distance carefully in his mind. Then we are all right, answered the Scarecrow, for you can carry us all over on your back, one at a time. We'll try it, said the Lion. Who will go first? Right, that's it. That's the whole pitch. I just thought it was striking that,
Yeah.
we're talking about Silo, deep underground, and you look at that page and it's about a deep ditch, and whether you can cross it, so on.
So you now believe that we are in Oz. That's what you're telling me.
Sure. I
Yeah.
don't know, I mean, look, I don't know if there's really anything to this. I just thought the resonances were at least kind of interesting,
Yeah.
to throw it
Yeah.
out there. If this is what cracks the code, my understanding of cryptography is not good enough to be able to explain exactly how that would work, but it
Yeah.
would be along the lines of, this page giving you the information about how to shift the letters so that you get it back in the
Yeah.
page.
I do wonder if it's sort of yeah, if it's the key, it's the thing that tells you how to then go look into the pact and find out exactly the message that Salvador Quinn is trying to, which is something that would be widely available, no matter what, no matter where, you can have access to this.
It'll be interesting to find out. I think we're going to find out next week, which is exciting because the title of next week's episode is The Book of Quinn. So I think they're telling
Yep.
you are actually going to find out next week. Of course, I think that might mean, structurally speaking, that they're going to leave us sitting with the cliffhanger in Silo 17 until 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we haven't talked about that really yet. Let's talk about that. And that last scene, I rewinded several times personally when I watched the
Yeah.
episode. Um, where to start here, I guess, right? I mean, you kind of ran through it in the summary. My your quibbles, I can't help but mention. I actually, I'm not even complaining when I say this because I actually appreciate that for once, Silo, the TV series, was just like, let's get to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you go, okay, well, how's she going to breathe down there? We're going to use the harmonium again? She goes, no, I need a power washer. And then they just got
Yeah.
one. And it's like, okay, great. You just I don't know why you didn't use a power washer the first time you were doing this kind of thing,
Right.
but fine. All right, you just got the power washer. Um, Solo warns her about the bends. I guess I did want to hit on that a little bit. How familiar are you with the bends? I don't mean the Radiohead album. I mean the
I mean,
physical
I'm
condition.
familiar enough, living near the ocean that, and have been scuba diving a couple of times where, I mean, they obviously give you the lesson, right? Where, if we go down and even if I mean, we're not nearly as deep as Juliet is when she's doing this task of turning the water pump back on. Just explaining what can happen of, go up with us. You need to not shoot your way up to the top because of how dangerous this can be, how how your blood vessels could burst and fill with air and, just on and on. So you're getting all sorts of safety lessons about this, very similar to what Juliet gets.
Mhm.
And of course, you have to take it very seriously when you're doing this. Juliet, whatever. I mean, the choice between, well, I might get bends or I might drown on here. I guess you're just going to go up and see what happens. So it shouldn't have much choice in that regard.
Yeah, she does kind of go slow at first anyway, and then
Yeah.
fast. So we'll see. One thing I think is interesting. This is like a side note, but there's a Ken Burns documentary. I think it's Ken Burns. Yeah, I think this one's Ken Burns on the Brooklyn Bridge,
Okay.
where apparently, and maybe there was some knowledge of something along the lines of the bends, but the building of the Brooklyn Bridge was when it really came to a head because you had these workers who were down underwater like all day,
Yeah.
And they, you know, just came up. You know, it's 19th century. They just came up, and then people started dying. Um, from my layman's understanding, it's often not fatal, but also
I think that's right. Yeah.
might not set in right away.
Yeah. I
I was
mean,
reading some stuff yesterday, you know,
it's going to
preparing here. So
incapacitate you. It's going to, yeah, make you feel miserable and incapacitate you for a while. It's likely not going to, because she's also not in salt water, I don't think.
right.
So that has something to do with it. But yeah, I mean, she just, like we said, just disregards it, goes straight up.
Well, I'm just, you know, just it's almost like what she seems fine at the end of the episode. She might
Yes,
still get the bends. You know what I'm telling
that's
you?
true. That's
Like next time we see her, she might still be like, "Oh no, I've got the bends now," and that won't necessarily kill her.
yeah,
Um, the what happens to the rope is similar to what happened to her rope back in the season premiere, which I want to
right.
read.
Right. We see a rope that's cut when she's trying to climb over and make her way over to the IT area. She's suspicious in that episode that there was someone else there, someone watching her, someone around. Obviously, we see Solo at the end of that episode. So I don't know that this confirms the fact that there is someone else there, but she gets about as close as you possibly can.
It definitely feels like it. Yeah, in that scene in the season premiere, it was kind of like she was suspicious or you know, like, hey, what happened here? You know, but it seems pretty clear there's no one around and just move forward, right?
Yeah.
Throughout the season, there have been some of these shots in Silo 17 kind of from a distance, which you could read along these lines of like someone watching, that there's
Yeah.
someone else. Um, a lot of stuff here to indicate that there is. Most importantly, probably the blood on the stairs and so on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is that an arrow? I don't know if that's was that an arrow. I
Yeah.
know there's a hatchet, but
Couldn't tell us exactly what it was. Yeah.
wasn't positive there was an arrow. So, like reading that scene, excuse me, which again I rewound several times. It's only like 10 seconds long. Like, wait, what? Reading that scene and what you see in it, it does really seem like someone came and attacked Solo and cut Juliet's rope.
Yeah, I certainly the way I read it, certainly expect that we will find that out. And I think one of the remaining questions for me is that tied to why Solo was so afraid to leave the vault and his paranoia about being far away from it at times? And if he suspects or knows that there are other people there, why is he not telling Juliet this? Juliet seems resourceful. Juliet seems to be able to help protect them. Why has he not told her this information?
Yeah. And I mean, the biggest thing is how would people be surviving?
Hmm.
Is there some food source that we don't know about? You
Yeah.
know, um, does this relate in some way to Solo not being Solo? Does it relate in some way to those people who were more freshly dead outside of the vault?
Yeah. Are
These are the
there,
questions.
are there, for lack of a better term, we have this term used another way. Are there raiders or for people from other silos or other places that have come, or are these just people that have come from elsewhere in the known world here that have come to explore these silos, right? We don't have any indication of any of that. I think I hate to say it, but you might be right about the timing of we may not figure this out until episode 9 if we're to spend all 8 looking into Salvador Quinn's library.
Yeah. Well, maybe the pacing's been good in the season, so maybe it'll go back and forth. And
Yeah,
like if it goes back and forth between where we're left in Silo 17 and where we're left in
yeah,
Silo 18, it's going to be great. Right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it'll be an exciting episode. I'm recalling, I think I might have thrown out a half tongue in cheek speculation in my season one finale article about the possibility of there being zombies or something in this world.
I mean,
Let's
we
pull that
do
back
not
in.
we do not know what caused them to go underground or why they are underground. I think I just have to quickly revisit this idea of why would this all-knowing AI not have that information? I'm very cautious of believing whatever that technology says, seeing as how it selectively does not have the data as to why they exist in this silo. So just
Yeah, like there's there.
didn't quite compute. Don't know why that is the case, but it must mean something.
Well, that I mean, the implication is that even the person in charge isn't allowed to know that.
Right, exactly.
You know.
But if someone was the head of IT and built this technology, I mean, I guess if we're thinking 350 something years ago or some point since then, yeah, they may not have had that knowledge as well. So yeah, this is this ultimate question of what is really happening outside and why it really happened is not going to be answered this season, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know. We
We'll
also,
see.
I mean, like part of what I'm enjoying about the show, although it also can be frustrating sometimes, is that like with absolutely everything we say, part of me goes, but I don't know if we know that for sure.
That's
You
right.
know, like the silo was built 350 years ago or whatever. Like maybe that's a lie. I don't know if we know
That's
that
right.
for sure.
Yeah, we really don't.
Um, but maybe there are. I mean, going back briefly to my ridiculous kind of speculation, which could be true. I mean, go back and listen to our podcast on sugar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so like maybe so if there's someone else in Silo 17 and the question is, how do they survive without food? Maybe they don't need food because they are undead zombies.
There you go. I mean,
It's a possible
we
explanation.
can't rule it out at this point.
Um, Another possibility would be if I don't know, Solo's got some kind of dissociative identity disorder or something like that, and there isn't really
Yeah.
anyone else, and Solo quote unquote attacked himself. I mean, I guess
Yeah,
that would be another possibility.
I think well, yeah, one thing that's speculated about in the piece I wrote this week was there's some sort of accident or self-harm or something done here. I would be surprised if that's it. I'll just say that.
Me too, but I just don't know what's possible here. It must tie in some way to Solo not being the real Solo,
Yeah.
because otherwise I don't even know what that would be doing in the story. So there must
Yeah,
be some
why
connection.
is it there? Absolutely.
Um, let's see. Anything else to hit on? You want to talk about Walker?
Oh,
Um,
just curious. This is just something to track going forward where I don't exactly know what would happen. I mean, I was thinking about, oh, well, they made the connection. Look at the security footage we found of Walker and Carla in the jail together holding hands. I mean, they were already allies in this rebellion in the beginning. So, does that add extra motivation for Bernard to hunt down Walker or do something to Carla to turn whatever? I don't know. Just interesting. Does that have consequences for her going forward? And does that matter? I mean, it's sort of a weird thing to leave that silo on. So does that end up mattering for them?
I think it will. Any thoughts on why she did that? Because I don't know what she
Yeah, I'm not sure what she
wanted.
hoped to accomplish,
Yeah.
that she would turn on her camera and someone would receive on the other end who's friendly. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. So she's just desperate for options because Billings has told her, no, we can't use radio. I can't send a message. We can't, there's no way to talk to anyone up above. So how do I communicate with someone up there? Um, I don't know. I really don't know why she would do that. She
I
seems
mean,
smarter than that.
does she actually want to create the situation that I think is what's going to happen here? Um, take it from the other side. I think it's clearer. Yeah, Bernard already knew that Walker and Carla had come up together and so
Yeah,
on, but it appears he did not know that they used to be married and that they
right,
still have deep affection for each other,
right.
resonating with his feelings for Meadows, surely. But now Bernard knows he doesn't just have a prisoner, he has a hostage.
Right, exactly.
So potentially he's going to try to use that to negotiate with Mechanical, you know, which might mean threatening to kill Carla unless they do this or that or whatever, or maybe directly with Walker
Yeah.
to try to get her to undermine the rebellion
I just think
for
you
the
must
sake of
have thought of
Carla.
Walker as a person that would bend to that sort of direction if if faced with something like that. I guess we'll find out.
I don't really think so, but again, even from her side, what is she looking to accomplish?
Yeah.
It could potentially be something similar, right? Like, hey, can I make contact to negotiate to get Carla out of there in return for getting everyone to calm down or something like that? Like
Yeah.
maybe she's putting a more positive spin on it, but that's really the only thing I can think because other than that, it just seems kind of stupid.
It does. It really does. Yeah. I
Um,
do not understand the reason. I don't understand the motivation. I don't understand she understands obviously the mechanics of what's happening there and how it's working. And so what she thought to gain by that, I do not know.
yeah. Well, we'll see. Definitely really looking forward to next week's episode. We're left on a big cliffhanger in Silo 17,
Hmm.
and I think an equally big one in Silo 18 with regard to the book and the code. I desperately want to know what that
Yeah.
decoded letter says, and we better find out. And the truth better be terrible. It's got to make sense that Meadows reacted the way that she did.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I'm very excited to find out.
Cool. All right. So hopefully you'll join us again next week. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do leave a good rating, review, all that good stuff. You can follow TV Obsessive on social media, search for TV Obsessive. Check out tvobsessive.com. Ryan is writing on each episode of this season of Silo week to week. I wrote episode by episode on season one if you want to look back at any of those. And there's all kinds of other stuff there that I hope you might read on tvobsessive.com. And we'll be back next week to talk about Silo season 2, episode 8. We'll see you then.
All right. See you in 2025.